Hey, cool kids. Welcome back into the Cool Grandpa podcast. I am excited that you have chosen to spend this time with me, and I hope that you get a lot out of this podcast. Now, this week, we're going to be talking about how we can take some of the leadership principles and the magic of thinking big and take those and really focus them in on our relationship with our children and grandchildren, especially the grandchildren. What I want us to do is take some of these books that are keystones to modern motivational speaking, modern sales training, modern business books, and take some of these older ones like Dale Carnegie's books and this particular book, and really put that lens on how do we apply this to our lives and our relationships with our grandchildren. So I appreciate you being here with me. Now, I want to start off with a simple question. What do your grandchildren believe about themselves because of you? Not what you hope they believe, not what you tell them they should believe, but what they actually believe deep down about who they are and what they're capable of. Now, I've been thinking a lot about this book and this question. I've been thinking a lot about the question because of the book, The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. Now, in chapter 1, he opens up with a very powerful idea. Success begins with belief, not intelligence, not talent, but belief. And when I read that, I couldn't help but think, if belief shapes success, then how can grandfathers have a much bigger role than we sometimes realize when it comes to the success of our grandchildren? Whether we intend to or not, we are shaping that belief. And today I want to share with you 3 ideas from that first chapter and apply them directly to our relationships with our grandchildren. This isn't about being perfect. This isn't about uh, being the best grandfather in the world. This is about being intentional. And that's one of the big hallmarks of this channel and I guess my message, lack of a better word, is being that intentional grandfather, being somebody that is really putting forth the investment into these relationships. Now, David Schwartz says that belief is the ignition switch for success. If you believe something can be done, your mind starts finding ways to do it. How many times have we been sitting around the living room, let's say, with toddlers, and the toddler sees a plate full of cookies or a toy or something that's out of reach, and we just see these little kids just starting to go for it because they believe that they can get to that cookie. They believe that they can get to that toy. Now, there might be a baby gate in between, there might be some other stuff that's blocking them from that goal, but it's funny and it's enjoyable to watch those little toddlers just push chairs around, do whatever they have to do to get to that table, to get to that plate of cookies. It's a riot, and it's one of the funniest things that you can do. And as a grandparent, you're just like shrugging your shoulders, enjoying watching the show, but mom and dad might be running to stop what's about to happen because the cookies are for later, whatever it is. But it's what I'm taking away from this is that having that idea and having that goal of like, I can do this, is something that those toddlers have. Nobody's going to tell them no. And when they tell them no, boy, do those waterworks really start to turn on. Now, I want us to take this idea and I want to take it from like the workplace, and we're going back into that living room, at the kitchen table, on the sidelines of a game, or during a quiet car ride. For children and especially grandchildren, belief often comes before the evidence. Most children don't have decades of experience. Well, I should say all of them, except maybe Benjamin Button. They don't have all the experience that their parents have, that we have to draw on, and they don't have the hits and the misses. So they've got to borrow some of this belief from the adults they trust. And grandpa, you're one of the safest voices they know. Here's the thing, we don't always notice. Children don't just listen to what we say about them, they absorb it. They absorb our tone, our expectations, our reactions. They notice when we're surprised by how well they did. They notice when we dismiss something as being, too hard. They also notice too that we will oftentimes tell them that something was way out of reach for them. We will tell them like, well, that was nearly impossible for you to do. And so we start putting limits on what it is that the children can do. And that's not a great thing. The grandkids also notice when we light up or when we shut down based on what's going on with the family dynamic and with our relationship with them. So, what I want to do is ask this question and take a second for you to answer it. You can pause the podcast, whatever. But here's the question. Am I influencing my grandchild's belief? Now, the real question is, what belief am I reinforcing intentionally or unintentionally? So the first one is, how am I influencing that grandchild's belief? Now, what we need to be doing again is going back and asking that question, what belief am I reinforcing intentionally or unintentionally? See, the kids already are starting to develop a belief about themselves. So are we reinforcing the belief that they have that they can't do things, that some things are out of reach for them, that some things are beyond their ability? Or are we starting to really kind of ask the questions that lead to a growth mindset for them? Everybody's going to have pushback, everybody's going to have failures, but what are we really influencing? And what are we really reinforcing, whether it's intentional or unintentional? Now, I want to switch over and talk a little bit about uh, believing big about the grandchildren's potential. One of the core lessons in the magic of thinking big is this: big thinkers aren't smarter, they simply believe more is possible. Now, here's the cool grandpa translation: your grandchildren will often rise or shrink to the level of belief they feel around them. So if they're in a family situation, a school situation, a peer group situation, remember that story about the crabs in the pot and the one that's trying to climb out of the pot, but the other crabs will grab it and pull it back into the pot? If they're in a situation similar to that, what are we doing to make sure that they believe that they can get out of the pot? Believing big doesn't mean being unrealistic. It doesn't mean having unrealistic hype. It doesn't mean pressure. It doesn't mean telling a child that they're the best at everything. It means speaking identity, not just outcomes. There's a difference between good job on that test and I like how you stuck with that even when it was hard. One praises a result, the other builds a self image. One tells a kid that, hey, you did awesome on that test. Well, what happens when they have a test and they don't do awesome? Are they associating our relationship and attaching a meaning with that relationship based upon how well they can do on a test? Or are they starting to see that our relationship is valued on what the effort is, the self-image, the praising of the work that goes into it? Grandchildren need to have at least one adult who sees who they're becoming, not just what they're doing today. And sometimes that belief sounds like, you're a problem solver. I see leadership in you. You ask really thoughtful questions. And sometimes belief sounds like silence, choosing not to label a mistake as who they are. That's one of the biggest things that I find a challenge with what I'm doing right now, which is teaching special education, having stepped away from corporate life for a period of time, is being able to give critical feedback to the students, but making sure that they don't think that it's a label of who they are, that it can be something of, hey, you can do better because I know how smart you are. And it's being able to do that. And so that's one of the things that really pops out in my mind as being something that we need to be doing a good job of as grandparents, is not labeling a mistake as who a person is. Now, here's a challenge for you. What's one belief you want your grandchild to carry into adulthood? You want them to be strong, capable, curious, resilient. Now ask yourself, how often do my words reinforce that belief with my grandchild? It's going to be interesting that when we go through this, I'm going to have a free worksheet for you that's just kind of a primer to remind us of some of these activities. But I want you to remember too that our words on how we describe, how we praise, how we critique our grandchildren really has a big effect on their belief system. They're going to probably be at odds with mom and dad over a lot of stuff as they're growing, which is absolutely normal. But coming from grandma, coming from grandpa, words of praise, words that reinforce positive beliefs is absolutely priceless. So, this next part that I want to get into is called really modeling confidence and not perfection. And that's something else that's really tough in, I think, the world today, is that on one hand, we want to be all loosey goosey with grades and everything else. But then on the other hand, kids get the idea that grades and perfection is what earns them um, recognition, that earns them what they feel about themselves and what reflects upon their family. Another idea from Schwartz and from this book is that confidence matters more than raw ability. And here's the good news for us as grandfathers. You don't need to have all the answers. In fact, pretending you do can backfire. Your grandchildren are watching you on how you handle frustration, how you handle and respond to mistakes, how you talk about yourself when you say, I'm terrible with technology. I've never been good at that. That's just not for people like me. They don't hear humility. They don't hear self deprecation. They hear limits. So I want us to be careful about how we talk about ourselves in front of our grandchildren. And as the grandkids get older and they adopt more and they learn more about us in our relationships, I'm saying, some sarcasm, some self-deprecating humor can come into the conversation. We're not trying to not have any fun, but especially when they're younger, those things about I'm terrible at this, I've never been good at that. This isn't for people like me. Um, these are things that definitely put limits on, because then what they can start doing is saying, well, I can never do math. I'm never good at reading English literature. I'm never good at science. I can't do this. And that just puts a limit on what they do. And what we need to be saying as grandparents is, man, I don't know yet. Let's figure this thing out. Boy, I messed that up, but I learned something. Boy, I'm still learning this thing. We want to model that confidence and make sure that that confidence is rooted in a growth mindset and not a limiting mindset, because the grandkids are picking up on this. One of the most powerful things a grandfather can do is learn with a grandchild. Now, I know I've talked about this. Dr. Carrie Burns from the Long Distance Grandparent has talked about this, is getting kids to definitely help with us learning technology. One of the great things to do is as kids start to adapt to social media, as they start to make accounts, and maybe you're not sure about how to get onto Pinterest, or you're not sure about how to do Instagram postings, whatever it is, it's a great way to ask the grandchild to help you out and teach you. You don't just throw the manual. The old joke when I was growing up is, the kids can program the VCR, and then the grandparents can come in and mess it all up, or they try doing the switches and buttons and everything else, and it's all messed up again, and you have to call the grandkids to fix it. There's a lot of technology that's like that. But what if we sat down and had the kids walk us through it? I know a lot of us are in positions where typically we have people do things for us, whether it's at work or in social settings or whatever. But man, having a grandchild sit down and teach you so that you learn and that you show what a growth mindset is, that you've learned new technology, that you've learned new ways of doing things, it's really powerful. And it's important to do that because building our own confidence and showing our own confidence isn't about just being right. It's about believing that you can grow. And that lesson, especially when they see you learning and they see you growing and that you have confidence, that's something that's really going to stick with the grandkids when they see you model that behavior. Now, this next part that I want to get into is really raise their thinking and not your voice. And let's talk something that's hard for grandfathers. Boy, this is difficult. The urge to fix, the urge to correct, the urge to step in quickly. Man, this comes from a heart of caring and a heart of just wanting to be, very supportive and probably be, somebody that wants to take hard things away from kids, but it can accidentally shrink the grandchildren's thinking. Big thinking grandfathers ask better questions. Instead of, here's what you should do, try out, what do you think your next step is? Hey, I saw that you failed on, or maybe not failed, use a different word. Yeah, I saw that you weren't successful with that. What do you think happened? What went wrong? What do you think you need to do next time? What did that experience teach you? What would you try differently next time? Questions do something powerful. They communicate trust. They say, I believe you can think this thing through. I believe you can come up with a solution. And that builds independence, that builds courage. And sometimes the most impactful thing we do is simply pause. Let the silence work. Let the child wrestle with the idea. Encouragement grows confidence far better than correction ever will. And look, I've been talking for a little while now, and I, I just want to leave you with this thought. Your grandchildren may not remember every conversation. They may forget specific advice that you give to them, but they will remember how you made them feel about themselves. Sometimes when that world is darkest, that relationship with a grandma, with a grandfather, with a caring uncle and caring aunt, that may be the one bright spot that they have for that day, that week, that month. And we want to be sure that we're not working towards inadvertently keeping them from thinking big about their future, big about the world of possibilities that lays before them. We want to make sure that we are always building and encouraging. And part of that, I believe, is really making sure that they think big, that they believe that uh, thinking big, acting in confidence, knowing that thinking big and success aren't always tied to things that maybe they don't have the best of, but tied to the things that they can absolutely control. So let's be sure that throughout this week and throughout 2026, we model confidence that encourages thinking, that leaves nothing behind more than memories for our grandchildren about the possibilities they have to overcome the obstacles in their mind. Now, if you'd like to go deeper, like I said, I created a free companion resource and I'm titling this Think Big Grandpa, a reflection guide. I'm going to put that into the show notes so you can download it. Again, it's more of just a little bit of a primer. Take a look at it and just print it out, have it on your desktop, wherever it is, and just look at it from time to time because it'll help you to reflect, reset, and intentionally speak belief into your grandchild's life. If you enjoyed this show, I really would appreciate it if you'd share it with somebody else. Also, be sure to go to the comment section for this episode on my website or on the social media post and let me know what's one big belief that you can speak into your grandchild's life today. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about the subject. So be sure to go to those comments, share what your insights are, and until next time, remember to stay cool.